Somehow, we got stuck organizing our first spring barbecue. It's me, Ronald Wilson, nicknamed Ham, but I'll tell you more about that later. My wife Haley was very pleased with herself this April Fool's Day. We were married for almost 3 years and bought our house right after the Christmas holidays. Haley and I loved our home, and especially our little cul-de-sac in Albany, Louisiana. I know that's too strong a word. Funny thing is, we were about 12 miles on the other side of Albany, on Interstate 55, so most of the locals joked that the first people to settle there must have hated Albany for some reason, but were too stupid to say the word no. There were several couples around our age living in the area, some with children, some without. We were one of those couples, and Haley stopped taking the pills at the end of February so we could starting a family. We received a lot of criticism from our neighbor friends and both sets of parents. I cooked on the grill, a brand new grill that was grilled and smoked with wood pellets. It was a joint Christmas gift from Haley and her parents. I looked around my yard, watching 15 or 20 neighbors having fun and having a great time while I flipped and tamped down the briskets. I was about to serve the alligator tail appetizers when I realized I had to take a leak. When I turned into the corridor, I stopped abruptly. I saw Dane Wilson kissing Haley. Why was my wife kissing my friend? This was the only question I asked myself before taking action. There were a few things that bothered me at this point, which I'll get into later, although despite spending so much money on brisket, I didn't want it overcooked. A few moments later, I heard several sirens wail. You'd think that in a small town like Louisiana, you'd be able to protect your wife's virtue in your own home, but that turns out not to be the case. A cop I knew from high school, Harley, handcuffed me, letting me know he was sorry. The local sheriff's office detained me and threw me into a cell, waiting to be taken to the county jail. My dad wouldn't understand, so I called my cousin Jared. I told him what happened so that my dad would hire me a lawyer. Later, when I was in the county jail, I was calm enough to think. Why was my wife kissing Dane? I had no idea that she would do something like that. She was always so loving and gave me a lot of attention. It must be because of Dane. We've been hanging out a bit since we moved into this cul-de-sac. We played darts in the local pub and went river fishing a few times. What I knew about him was little. We only talked about men's affairs. I knew that he grew up in the New Orleans suburbs and that he had attended a prestigious law school up north. He never finished school because his father's business failed. One thing you will learn in our wilderness is to notice how a person behaves. If there was one thing I didn't like about Dane Woodson, it was the way he acted with me out there on the river, but around people he was a different person. As I understand it, he was trying to prove something to himself and trying to prove something to everyone else. I got the impression that he didn't feel too good about himself because of his failure in college. I mean, he still had a good job as a lawyer in the county seat. By comparison, I attended a local college for 2 years and worked as a graphic designer at a local printing shop. That still didn't explain why my wife was kissing him. I thought I was defending her honor, but looking back, I see that she didn't resist at all. I probably went a little overboard. Yes, I had a short temper. This has appeared before. Mom and Dad were always angry and worried about me at the same time. I played as a defender and midfielder. This was in my first year. 3 games into the season, I returned to the practice field after dark, hoping to find my watch. My grandma gave them to me for my birthday, and I'll be in deep shit if I lose them. I shined a flashlight on the bench and was about to give up when I heard a muffled female voice from the direction of the stands. I shined a flashlight in that direction. Billy Ray and Elmer were there. I had to deal with the guys so that they would not offend Marley. I ended up spending the night in the hospital. Billy Ray and Elmer's parents filed assault charges, but it was Marley's father who came to my aid. He had a brother who was a district attorney, and Marley's father talked them into dropping the charges. I didn't get to play football that year, but I suddenly became popular. In the second year, everything was different. I worked hard to get into the starting lineup. I hit hard, or so I was told. Local rival teams started calling me the water bearer, like in the Adam Sandler movie. My teammates were having none of it, and I was given the nickname Hammer, which later became simply Ham. Unlike that film, I didn't get a scholarship. We never made the state team. Our team sucked, except for me and the quarterback, and we lost 6-5 at the end of the season. Our town was too small for the scouts to waste their time. I never minded because I had a lot of friends and was known as a bull in a china shop. Marley stayed close throughout the episode. She was heading to the University of Texas, so we said goodbye quietly, although she kept in touch. She was also the one who convinced me to go to community college. I really liked this girl. My next encounter occurred just after finishing my last semester before finishing my bachelor's degree. It was a stupid bar fight. However, luck was again on my side as the judge dealt with the ringleaders and let about 15 of us off with a warning. The allegations remain on our records. So I sat and waited for the morning so I could run out and talk to my wife. But that did not happen. Dad couldn't find me a lawyer so quickly or didn't try very hard, but in the end I hired public defender. Judge Tubbs had an angry look on his face as the prosecutor read the charges. I guess I've gone a little crazy. Mr. Bezer Wilson, he turned to me, I am not inclined to allow bail in this case. You are expected to try to escape. I went to my lawyer and told him I could barely afford gas, let alone a plane ticket. I was detained and returned to the county jail. 3 hours later, I was taken to a room where my lawyer and Haley were sitting. He talked about what would happen next and explained that Dad had finally hired a lawyer for me, whom I would meet with the next morning. He explained once again what I was accused of and told me not to say a word to anyone, not even my cellmate. Then he left me alone with my wife. "Oh, Ham," she exclaimed as he left the room. "I'm so sorry for my role in this. I just feel terrible." What she said didn't make any sense, so I just sat there and looked at her. She seemed to finally understand it. "It was a joke, Ham," she wailed. "Stupid April Fool's joke. Why did you have to cause him such pain? It's funny when you love and trust someone so much, or maybe it's just funny when I do that." She suddenly seemed overly dramatic to me, but she acted no differently than usual. I couldn't decide if it was because I was so angry at her or what, but it seemed like I saw right through her. "Joke?" I asked incredulously. "Why would this why?" "I'm very, very sorry, Ham." At least her voice sounded guilty. "He said it would be funny, and our joke would be popular with the neighbors. He told me that everyone knew you were the big tough guy in high school. I was so proud of our house, of you at the barbecue, that I probably stupidly agreed. After what happened, I realized that it was a stupid move." "It would be a stupid thing to do," I answered, "to do as you described. Except I saw you two kissing. This wasn't the first time. The April Fool's prank won't work, Haley." She studied my face for several moments, trying to find anything that could confirm my words. She saw nothing that could reassure her. "Why did you need to pretend to be a real soldier?" She changed direction. "You're in big trouble, Ham. 2 people can play this game. You were in the hospital to visit your lover, weren't you?" I grinned. Haley was clearly annoyed that I wasn't as retarded as she thought. "We have serious problems." Her voice became louder. "I decided to see if I could help you by reminding him that we both started it all with this stupid prank. He does not care. He said you were going to jail and he would be waiting for you when you got out." "Great," I sighed. "Now I have to worry about some crazy person coming after me. Make sure he knows that my list of friends is much larger than his. Whatever happens to me will happen to him 3 times. Stop talking macho bullshit, Ham," she told me. "We made a very big mistake, but you are facing a prison sentence." "I can't live like this. I've never seen you like this. I don't think I've ever seen anyone behave like that. Now I'm afraid of you." "You don't seem to notice the obvious, Haley." I brought my face closer to hers. "Who said that I want to live with you? I'll let you stay in the house until I figure this out, but then you should make a plan for where you'll live." "This is my home too." She became more and more impudent. "Our names are on the documents. You're my husband, so you better get your head out of your ass or things will go wrong for you. Get out, I growled quietly. At the door, she knocked softly and then looked over her shoulder. I'll be back in a few days, Ham, when you calm down enough. My future ex-wife suffered from hallucinations. Then I was sure that he had approached her. She took it as an adventure. Now she was trying to kick my ass. 1 minute she was begging, and the next minute she was threatening and demanding. I would never put up with this even if I was sent to prison. Perhaps I made a mistake by marrying her. A few hours later, I was sitting in the same chair meeting with Jonathan Turney's, the lawyer my cousin had hired. He was a big, tall guy with luxuriant hair and an impressive appearance. I liked his no-nonsense approach. Mr. Woodson has serious injuries, he told me. If you are found guilty, you face 3 to 5 years in prison. If we can prove that you were protecting your wife and home, well, that's the best it can be. It will depend on the judge we choose. I believe the best strategy is to put you in full protection mode. You saw a man who attacked your wife. This means that you did not observe what was happening and simply reacted. I had to agree with him. We talked about how to build a case around this defense and what I could have expected in court if I had not decided to plead guilty. There was no collateral. I spent some time explaining what I wanted Mr. Turney's to tell my cousin. I was planning on moving my house payments into a separate bank account, but not paying off my mortgage. Haley wouldn't have been able to afford this if she hadn't asked her parents for help. I hoped that I would be free before the bank decided to foreclose on the debt, but I was not going to continue paying for my wife to live there without any money. This move will also likely encourage her to move elsewhere, perhaps to her parents or to her lover. With work, it was different. Jared spoke to one of my best friends from work, Doran McDonald. The printing house was small and privately owned. Not having an employee is not good for business. If they fail to meet deadlines, they will lose customers. Doran did everything he could to smooth things over with the owners. He was successful, but only temporarily. The question of my employment hung in the air. 4 days later, Haley came to see me again, but I refused. I have no idea if she was upset, disappointed, or relieved. 2 days later, Mr. Turney's told me the details of the plea deal, and I refused it. We were going to court. All this took almost 45 days. Haley was with my cousin Jared and my parents. At first, they sat together, probably out of solidarity. However, after the first week, I only saw Haley occasionally. When my parents visited the prison, they told me that she was angry because I refused to meet with her. While the prosecution was presenting its case, Mr. Turney spoke to me during the morning break. "I need you to talk to your wife," he began. "During a trial, the jury pays attention to many things, Ronald, and when they see that your own wife does not support you, they begin to doubt. We need to present a united front. I know you're upset about what she did, but remember, our strategy is to make Mr. Woodson the aggressor, and you both the victims." I understood what he was talking about, and I was thinking the same thing myself. Damn it, if she could pull off that performance, so could I. Haley seemed worried to me, but maybe she was just exhausted. I couldn't say more, which was another sad discovery. "Hello, Ham," she said solemnly. "How are you holding up?" "It's okay," I told her without much emotion. "And you?" She didn't answer, but seemed to be looking around the room, avoiding my gaze. "We're done, aren't we?" she finally asked. "I'm not sure," I shrugged. "We have a lot to figure out before I can answer this question." "Maybe you could start by explaining and stop these crazy April Fool's jokes." "It's not what you think," she replied. "It was a joke. The problem is that I can't understand why I agreed to this in the first place. I know it doesn't look pretty, which it must look like, but I swear it was just one incident. How can I make you believe me?" I thought about it, refraining from answering. I thought it over carefully in my cell. "Okay, Haley," I took a deep breath. "I will speak calmly and tell you the truth. I guess I owe you a lot. What I saw was nothing like the first time. You looked like old lovers. So, did you know him before he moved to the area, or have you become friends in the few months since he arrived?" Haley tried to act calm. She swore she met him just a few months ago on a neighborhood walk we were both on. I didn't believe her. Her posture, her eyes, nothing seemed right to me. The worst thing was that I saw her as she was. I had blinders on when we fell in love and got married. Now I saw a selfish girl. The trial continued and Haley was in court, probably at the urging of my lawyer. The biggest problem was that all our neighbors turned their backs on me. Their testimony contradicted our planned defense. I guess I couldn't blame them. They didn't want to live on the street with a crazy person. Most of the time in court, I didn't pay much attention to it. Mr. Kush's attorneys put on a great show, talking about the timeline of events and how I reacted in a split second. In the end, this was not enough. I was convicted. I will never forget the look on my parents' faces. Even Haley cried. 3 days later, I stood in court to hear my verdict and everything the judge had to say. Mr. Bruce Wilson, he cleared his throat. A jury of your neighbors found you guilty. Even though the incident occurred in your own home, excessive force was found to have been used. I sincerely regret the cruel so-called prank you committed and hope that your time in prison will serve as an example for you to reflect on. I hope you will learn to control your temper as it has manifested itself on other occasions so that you can become a productive member of society. I hereby sentence you to 1 year in state prison. He hit the hammer, and that was the end of it. I learned to control my temper during the first week in prison. My cellmate took me under his wing. He was sentenced to life. I got a crash course in when, how, and where to use my pent-up anger. The others soon realized that of all the fresh meat, I was probably not worth the effort. During the trial, I served exactly 54 days in the county jail. Mr. Ernest told me that it should be credited at the end of the year. He gave me the opportunity to appeal, but given the circumstances that I was already broke, the best thing to do was just serve my time. I had been there for almost 2 months when Haley finally came to visit me. I didn't expect to ever see her again since she found out I hadn't paid the house down. I expected her to propose to me, paid for by her parents. What she came to say exceeded all my expectations. "Ham, there's no point in beating around the bush," she began. "I am pregnant. We're having a baby." I think my inaction gave her the opportunity to continue. "Isn't it wonderful, baby? We will become parents, and you will have enough time to communicate with our child." "Whose child is this?" I asked with a blank look. She turned to look. "What the hell are you talking about?" She pulled herself together and went on the offensive. "I just told you. I haven't had sex with anyone." "I don't buy it," I stated coldly. Haley started crying fake tears. "What happened to you, Ham?" she screamed. "You are breaking my heart." I just sat and looked at the empty wall. Haley finally stood up and walked towards the door. "Ham, I need you to find a way to pay for the house. We need housing now more than ever. Talk to your parents, please." Instead, I contacted my lawyer. When I told him what my supposedly loving wife had said, he shook his head. "Did she tell you how far along she is?" I didn't ask and didn't pay attention. "What do you want to do?" he asked gloomily. "I want her examined as soon as possible." "Give me the name of a divorce lawyer." "Ron," he put his hand on my shoulder in a fatherly way. "You can't even afford to pay my bill, and you don't know if you'll still have a job when you get out. How about I find the forms online, fill them out, add an extra hour to your bill, and you try to get her to sign? Of course, I can draw up documents to establish paternity. Prison overcrowding is a problem even in Louisiana." Surprisingly, I didn't look a gift horse in the mouth. I was released after serving 3 months plus 54 days, I think. The only downside was that I had to wear an ankle bracelet for the first 2 months of the trial period. It was pure luck that I was released. In 5 days, the bank would change the locks on the house. Haley pretended to be very happy that I was coming home. The first thing I did after sending Haley out for pizza was talking to my cousin. He told me that the money from my second account only covered about 90% of the total mortgage debt, less interest. He'll have to do his part if I want to keep the house. I quickly agreed. When Haley returned, we sat and ate quietly. "We will lose our house." I feigned sadness about this. I found out about this today. I don't want to talk about anything tonight, she said with false hope. We can deal with the consequences of this mess tomorrow. Tonight, after dinner, all I want is to be with my husband. Too much time has passed. It was certainly full of surprises. I knew that she had received the letter and that Turney's had warned her in advance that a paternity notification was awaiting her. Haley, I looked at her as if I didn't even know her. I know you received the notice. We won't have anything until I see results that confirm it's my baby. Haley stammered and whined. She screamed that I was being cruel. She threw a tantrum, and it did not go unnoticed. I began to understand what acting was, and it made me sick. Then I thought about my cellmate and his teachings. The chair flew out from behind me as I stood up in anger. Leave me alone. I clenched my fists. When I see the results, we can talk about our future, but not before. Haley turned pale and headed towards our bedroom, not even taking her eyes off me. Later, I went to open the bedroom door, and she shouted, "Sleep on the sofa." The next day, after Haley left for work, or whatever she was doing at the time, I called the bank after my cousin, who was making the payment. I wanted to know the payment amount. I then found a realtor, Mrs. Alice Burns, who came to see me that afternoon. No matter how much of a monster Haley became, she still kept the house in perfect order. We would have made a little more than the house cost, about $30,000, maybe a little less, but I could pay Mr. Turney's, so that was fine with me. I asked the realtor to install the sign as soon as possible. I then offered an additional percentage if she could sell it in 30 days. I already had a pretty good idea of how the paternity test would go. She smiled and told me thank you, but no thanks. She was good enough to sell it. Haley returned home from work late. I had a feeling that her lover was not yet fully recovered, and I began to think. Haley came and handed me an envelope with the results of the examination. Even if she noticed the "for sale" sign, she would probably think it was put up by the bank. "I hope you're happy," she grumbled. "I'm so angry at you, Ham, that my eyes are running wild. I have no idea how you're going to make amends, but it's going to take a long time and a lot of time." Sucking up. I thoughtfully tried to understand what I actually found in her. "Thank you," was my monosyllabic answer. Later, as I was sitting watching a football match, I opened the results. I couldn't believe my eyes. Is it possible that she just took the results and didn't ask the doctor any questions, or was she hoping I wouldn't read the report? The results showed that the probability that I was the father was 2-3%. Some time later, she waltzed into the living room and sat down on the other end of the sofa. "Can we stop all this and talk a little about our future?" she asked very sweetly. "About the future?" I answered calmly. She looked at me strangely. For a second, I thought she just misunderstood me. "Now that you know that the child is yours," she said, as if not understanding my question, "we need to clarify the situation and continue to live our lives." "These documents say that I am not the father," I said, as if nothing had happened. "What are you planning? Another prank?" She immediately went on the defensive. "Ham, what the hell?" She spoke louder. "It says here that you are a father." 98%. I handed her the document. "I don't believe you're that stupid, Haley." I went out into the backyard. Haley never came out, and as usual, the bedroom door was locked when I checked later. The next day, Haley didn't come home after work. It seemed to me that something was wrong in the house, and after further inspection, it turned out that most of her things were missing. There was a note on the TV remote that said she left. She was sorry. Yes, yes, yes. I'm starting to wonder if I'm experiencing Groundhog Day. The 1st of April was repeated again and again. Sitting there, without her presence in the house, I began to realize something. Could this idiot learn her so that she would try to persuade me to commit violence? Maybe send me back to prison so they can enjoy each other and keep most of my stuff? It made sense, but why bother? Why didn't she just run away with him? I wrote to her. Coward. Or is she crazy? I thought it would be useful to get this over with. That's when I realized she never respected me. She thought I was so stupid that she could keep playing with me until I was exhausted. I was sure Woodson encouraged her to do this. It was a quiet evening at home. Little did I know that while I was in prison, I had already written Haley off. I knew I didn't like her, and I didn't like her, but it was nice to just sit at home without her. This didn't last long. It was 2:03. This is what my old-fashioned alarm clock showed. I could barely see the clock through the smoke. I jumped out of bed and ran through the bedroom door into the hallway. Damn, the house was on fire. I managed to get out. I pulled my phone out of my pants pocket and dialed 911, but I could already hear sirens in the distance. After a flurry of activity, I sat on the back step of the ambulance, bandaging my ankle. When they first took me to their tower, my ankle bracelet went over the fence. The police were kind enough to disconnect it, and then a pleasant surprise awaited me. At first, I didn't recognize her wearing the sheriff's cap. It was Marley. "How are you, Ham?" She smiled radiantly. Because I looked at her like she was crazy, her smile faded. "Sorry, Ham," she apologized. "This is not the time to joke. I'm glad you're okay." We talked about the fire. She told me that she was following my case, and even in prison, she did everything she could to keep me safe and out of trouble. It was unexpected, but it gave me a warm feeling. In fact, it might have just been Marley's presence. "Do you think she did it, Ham?" She seemed unsure when asking this question. "I don't know," I admitted honestly. "She just moved out after she tried to lie to me about her baby's paternity test. I think she's on the verge of a mental breakdown. Can we talk about this tomorrow?" She didn't wait for an answer. "Right now, I need to change your location. You're still under house arrest, even though you no longer have a home." She wasn't kidding when she knocked on my cousin's door at 8:30. She took me there after all the questioning and the paramedics examining my ankle. Marley was all business when we went into the kitchen and I offered her coffee. "We're checking your your wife, and maybe that Dane Woodson guy for setting your house on fire. I need details about what has happened since you left prison." So this was deliberately set up. I asked for clarification. It's still under investigation, so I can't say much, but yes, there were some suspicious chemical accelerators there. I had a copy of the paternity test that my lawyer requested, and it turned out that she was pregnant by someone else. I can't say for sure it was Woodson, but it's highly likely unless she was messing around with different guys while I was in jail. He also threatened to kill me for the beating I gave him, and because of which I ended up in prison. "We all know about this," she admitted. "The stupid bastard said it in his affidavit that first day in the hospital." Jared was still in bed, but Marley leaned toward me as if she was sharing a secret. "Hammer, if it was him." "Well, I was wondering if I could help you with your situation." "For example, what?" I asked in surprise. "He would have been sent to prison." "For this?" "Listen, you helped me get out of a very difficult situation." She paused. "I will never forget what you did for me. I feel obliged to you. This feeling is made worse by the fact that part of your record was related to what you did to protect me from being attacked." I just looked at her. I was partly mesmerized by her beauty and smile. She was as gorgeous as ever. "Arson is one of the most difficult crimes to prove," she began in another direction. "Not because we don't have good criminologists, but because good lawyers know how to get around them. If your wife could have been involved in this," she continued, "we want to try to record it. Do you think you could help with this?" Marley installed a CCTV system in Jared's living room. My cousin had to pay for the equipment so he could claim it was a home security system without it being seen as a covert operation. He was glad to do it. According to the plan, I was supposed to invite my wife to my place under the pretext of possible reconciliation. I had to wait for Marley to tell me when this happened. She promised me some satisfaction after the meeting ended, not the kind of satisfaction she said. This made me wonder if I had a chance of getting a date with Marley. She seemed to still have some feelings for me. Despite this, she taught me what to say and what to ask when I met Haley. Our goal was to make her so angry that she would tell us something she didn't want. Haley's temper could help achieve a more or less decent confession. Even if Marley and I were just friends, I wouldn't mind. I lost my job and my home and was found guilty of a crime. Luckily, the realtor canceled our contract. I wanted to continue living my life. A week later, I got a call. Marley rehearsed for a few minutes before giving me the green light. Haley seemed eager to talk. Maybe this will work. Jared stayed away from his house to give us space and hopefully calm Haley down. When she arrived, I handed her a beer and we sat facing each other in the living room. Her skinny jeans and loose top were also a gimmick. At least I learned something. To begin with, I took a deep breath. Marley and I discussed strategies for appearing reserved, subdued, and willing to give in. "How are you doing, Haley?" I started. "Not really, Ham," she replied. "I miss you. I am very sorry that this happened to the house. I know the bank sold him anyway, but we had so many good memories with him. I hope I have good news, Ham. Maybe this will help me start remembering something new." She must be delusional, or she really thought I was that stupid. Just the sight of her made me feel sick. "We'll see," I said in an unhappy tone. "I think we need to be honest first. If I can't find a way to trust, then there's no point in it." She nodded hesitantly. "I need to know," I asked slowly, "how did it all start with you?" Her gaze became more intense, and she held back a smile, glad that I had asked a question about her boyfriend and not about the fire. That's when I realized we had it in our hands. "Okay, Ham," she replied. "You're calm, right? Won't you lose your temper?" I told her I was calm. "He started flirting with me at a neighbor's party." She rubbed her hands on her knees, a clear sign of nervousness. This was also what she did when she lied. "I flirted back, Ham," she admitted. "I'm sorry. I was amazed. He is handsome and made me happy with his compliments. He came by several times when you were at work. The third time was a week before we had a party and we had sex. Sorry, I know it hurts to realize this. I don't know why I did this. She was good, I have to give her credit. It was, to put it mildly, discouraging that what I then witnessed was something I had already seen before in my own assumptions." "And at the party?" I asked. "Was this done to hint at this?" "Perhaps," she shrugged. "I don't know. He was there when I came out of the bathroom and kissed me. He said, 'Just tell the Neanderthal it's an April Fool's joke.' Which is what I did." "And you decided that the best strategy is not to take your husband's side?" I needed to focus on her feelings for me and subsequent actions. I didn't know what to do. Her voice finally sounded honest. "I was crazy about him. Everyone looked at me with surprise. Pity. I actually came to see you, but you were so angry. I was scared. I didn't think he would follow through with his accusations. Then I visited him in the hospital to try to convince him to drop the charges, and I found out what irreparable damage you had done to him." "And then you found out you were pregnant," I said by way of affirmation. "Why did you decide that I would agree to this?" "I was in despair, Ham," she cried even more. "Everything was falling apart. After you were imprisoned, I decided to go to him and ask if he would agree to take me in and raise our child together. I am so sorry. I thought that if you stayed there for a year, then everything would be over between us. This was the moment of truth. So I went out earlier, and you helped him set my house on fire. Have all your grand plans gone to waste?" "No, Ham." She was on the verge of hysterics. "I gave him the key, baby. That's all. He promised you wouldn't be home when he did it. That's all." I looked at her with contempt, and I know she felt it. Well, it just shows who you can trust. The ambiguity made her wonder who I was hinting at, her or myself. "Sorry, Ham." She couldn't stand it. "I screwed up big time. Can you forgive me?" "No," I said, standing up. "I can't. I made a mistake bringing you here. I was hoping for a miracle. Anything I could grab onto. You confirmed the worst." "You don't." She realized her mistake and panicked. "Don't drag me into what you're going to do, Ham. Please, I need to think about the child. Don't ruin your child's life either." I walked her to the door and then texted Jared. He, in turn, contacted Marley. I grabbed a cold beer and sank heavily into my chair, wondering if it would have been better to actually agree to Haley's request. It only took a few nanoseconds to realize that everything that was happening was a consequence of her actions. An hour later, I heard the doorbell ring. At first, I thought Jared had forgotten his key. Instead, there was a small cardboard box on the mat. I examined it carefully and then opened the package. Inside, I found a note and a burner phone. The note said, "Watch the video, then destroy the phone, box, and note." I sat down at the table with pleasure. The note contained a 6-digit password for the phone. There were only 3 apps on the home page, and I opened a video. It was dark. It was Billy Ray. "Hello, Hammer," he said happily. "This is because you changed my life at school. You stopping what we were doing changed my life. I still have to kick your ass. This guy is here, and he won't bother you anymore. Do you hear?" I watched the video again, then threw everything into Jared's fireplace and flicked the switch on the wall. The next day, Jared showed detectives the surveillance footage. 3 days later, Haley was arrested. The media speculated that one Dane Woodson, the lover, had skipped town, leaving his pregnant ex-wife to shoulder the burden. 3 months later, Haley was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison. It would have been less if I had not been home during the fire. She gave her little girl up for adoption. I never visited her. The week before Christmas, Jared and I had a barbecue. Darren McDonald and his young bride were there. Several of my former classmates from school spent most of the day playing cornhole. Mr. Turney's and his wife Julie stopped by briefly. I think he did this because I was still making payments. Billy Ray was also present. He took me aside and explained what happened to him after I stopped him from making the worst mistake of his life. Let's just say he was happy to oblige. Poor Elmer had died 5 years earlier when a crane collapsed on him while he was working on an oil rig. Later that night, Marley and I were lying in bed. It turns out that this lovely lady was just as interested in me getting healthy again as I was in having her as my new girlfriend. "Oh, sorry, a woman. After all, she is a police officer." "You know, baby," I said, "I feel like this is the first day of a new life. Our new life." She didn't answer right away. She raised her pretty face to look at me. "I think April 1st was your first day." Who am I to argue? Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.